Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Robert Swartwood here. Tonight, I am joined by the multi-award-winning author of November Road, The Long and Faraway Gone, Double Barrel Bluff, Dark Ride, Gunshot Straight, and Whiplash River, and his latest novel, the great Crooks, which we will, of course, be discussing. That's right, it's your favorite writer of mine, Lou Berney. Lou, how the
Wait,
heck
wait, is
are
that
you?
true? Is that I'm your favorite writer? Can we get that recorded online? I'm your
Uh,
favorite. Say,
it,
Lou
it, it
Berney
is
is
going to
my
be
favorite writer.
recorded.
Lou
Full
Berney is my
disclosure,
favorite
that's the
writer.
intro for everybody.
Let's hear it.
So yeah,
Lou
when I
Berney
had Dan
is my
Brown on
favorite
last
writer.
week, that was the same thing I said. No,
I want to
he
hear it.
his publicist won't get back to me. So first of all, to start, congratulations on this, because earlier this year it was the winner for the CWA, which is Crime Writers Association, Steel Dagger for Best Thriller. It was also a finalist for the LA Book Times or the LA Times Book Review. But yeah, that's really really great. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Um, I know our time is always limited, and I know it's only half hour, but it still feels very like tight on my end. So I want to try to make sure we squeeze everything in. I said we had a little bit of a surprise for you. I hope this is a pleasant surprise. Okay.
Uh, I don't love that intro at all.
I tracked down. I got a copy of this.
Oh God, I hate that cover so much. That cover
Yeah,
kills
the
me.
cover is, I'm sure, yeah, but
Unfortunate.
I haven't had a chance. This just came in somewhat recently, so I haven't had a chance to read it yet, and it's in pretty good shape actually for how old this is. This is what 1991.
91 it
Um,
came out. My first collection of short stories.
so you're first. So
My
is there a
only
chance in the
collection of short
future you
stories.
might have another
So
collection? I mean, have you written, you've written
someday.
short stories in the interim?
Yeah, I started writing short stories back then, and someday, every story kind of demands a different form, as you know, as a writer. And so,
Sure.
like, there's definitely ideas I have that are like saying, like, we need to be a short story. It's not enough for a novel, but it would make a great tight short story. So I love the form, and I think there's always a place for it. And I love to read short stories.
Now, this included your story that was in the New Yorker, News of the World. And I had talked to a couple of weeks back, Dan Sean, and he had mentioned before about how one of his collections, the publisher was really pushing to have the title be one of his more, quote unquote, popular short stories. But she really kind of fought against just because it wouldn't really work, and he made the right call. The story, The Road to Bobby Joe, is one of the stories in the collection, but from what I can tell, it was just original to the collection. Like, was there? I know this was a while ago, but like, did they push to try to like make sure the New Yorker title was kind of like the quote unquote lead story or the lead title story?
That's an interesting question. I can't quite remember how that came about. I think my editor at the time was this great guy, Cork Smith, who was a legend in New York publishing. He'd been Thomas Pynchon's first editor, and I think he was great. He just gave me free rein. He's like, "What do you want the title to be?" And I think that was a lot of pressure to put on a 25-year-old or whatever. Like I was like, I don't know. Someone tell me what it should be. So I don't know how I eventually came up with that title. Um, to be honest. I'm sure it was just something I asked a lot of people about, and that was the one that got the most votes. So there was nothing kind of larger than that involved at the time.
Yeah.
I
And again,
not I don't know. I wish it had been News of the World, but that's a great novel. News of the World by Paulette
it
Giles
is, and she
is
passed
one of
away
my
somewhat recently.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's one of my favorite all-time novels, which I think came out after this. But anyway,
Oh yeah.
I'm glad it doesn't overlap.
Yeah, no, I think News of the World came out at least in the last decade. I could be wrong, but
Yeah,
it is
I think
somewhat
so. Yeah.
rather recent. Last question I have on here. So this features 12 stories. At the time, obviously, you had at least 12 stories to put in a collection. Do you remember the process in like putting together? Because I find it always interesting for short story collections, just sometimes the level of thinking and care that goes into that. And then on the adverse, sometimes people are just like, just it doesn't really matter. But I mean, do you remember like, did you really kind of take into consideration like, okay, I want this story to lead into this story and this story, or was it more just like, a gut feeling type thing?
I don't remember that so much, the sequencing. I do remember there was three or four stories I did not include. Like there was a lot of like, okay, what's the right story for this collection? What fits best? I don't remember so much the sequencing of things, but I'm sure that was on my mind too. But I left three or four good stories out that just didn't quite fit with what I thought the overall vision of the collection was. And again, like whether that matters or not, it mattered to me at the time, and that's kind of what was guiding my thinking.
Sure. And then obviously this book has been out of print. I think we may have discussed this last time, but I'm completely blanking. Is there any interest to, I'm sure all the rights have reverted back to you. Is there any interest to just try to, get it out there again in the world or
There's no
no?
interest in my part. No, no, not
Okay.
whatsoever. Because it's one of those kind of things where you're like, that was a great, I'm proud of it for what I did when I did it, but now I feel like it's so far away and it doesn't really reflect me at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not something I really want you or anyone else to hold up again to the camera. So put that down. Thank you.
All right. I'm not gonna lift it up. I was actually gonna lift up your author photo, but I won't do that
Please
either.
don't do that.
So
Don't
how it
do
go.
that. Oh my God.
All right, Lou. We're gonna move on. We're gonna move
This is a
on.
nightmare.
We're gonna move on. All right. Well, let's talk before we get into obviously the Crooks, which is a great book. And I'm sure you've won so many awards. Is at the very least going to be nominated for several awards. I'm sure next
Grammy.
year. Fingers
Hoping for
crossed.
the Grammy.
Knock on
Yep.
wood. Let's talk about the Lowdown. So you are one of the staff writers on this new show. It's on FX. It was created by Sterling Harjo, who co-created Reservation Dogs, which was a big hit. Um, can you talk about just like how did this opportunity come about? Now, obviously, it takes place in Oklahoma, and that's kind of like your stomping grounds. But like, is there anything more from that?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is that I'm from Oklahoma and I'm an Oklahoma City writer, and Sterling is very much an Oklahoma writer and filmmaker. But more than that, yeah, the lowdown is a noir with humor, and that's my wheelhouse. Like I'm great at crime with some humor in it. So like it was a perfect fit for me, both in terms of location, in terms of tone, in terms of characters. Like it was this dream kind of opportunity. Like I used to write in Hollywood before I became a novelist, and I would not just take any job anymore. I don't have any interest in writing, something that's not in my wheelhouse because I'm just not great at it. Like I need to pick something that's really fun and great for me. And the lowdown was just right down the middle of the plate for me. It's like everything I love about TV. I love Sterling's work. Reservation Dogs was great. I love sort of the movies that the lowdown is based on. It was just like a perfect marriage of interest and talent.
Yeah, I think it was on. I think it was The Watch on YouTube I was watching, and the guys there were discussing how they had at least heard, and you correct me if I'm wrong on this, or that they had heard that Sterling kind of modeled this after Robert Altman's The Long Goodbye.
Yeah,
Is
that
that
was
accurate?
definitely an influence. Yeah, we definitely use that as a touchstone during the writing process. And that's one of my favorite films. And, I love the Coen brothers deeply. And there's other kind of PI movies from the 70s that we touched on. But yeah, there was a sort of a common language right away that we all spoke. And that really was made the writing process really fun. And we had a guy like Sterling who's truly like an incredibly electrifyingly original, brilliant writer and filmmaker to sort of like guide us. And I just like it sounds sappy, but I'm just like so grateful for the opportunity and to work with another Oklahoma guy, by the way, Duffy Boudreau, who had worked on the show Barry on HBO. Like he's another Oklahoma guy who's brilliant and like got such a great sensibility. So to be in part of that, it was like getting asked to join the E Street Band. Like Springsteen said, like, hey, you want to come play, keyboards for us? And it'd be like, yes, I do, in fact. Like, and so it was being able to step into that was just phenomenal for me.
Yeah, I remember Bill Hader talking about him all the time when they were making Barry. I mean, he was just the go-to and always kind of, yeah. So that's great. Yeah, I mean, it seems like again, it's only well, the third episode just came out, I believe, last night or the night before. I don't know.
Last night, yep.
My wife and I would do the, next day on Hulu FX type thing. So, but I guess it airs on FX Tuesday nights, correct?
Tuesday nights at 9,
Yeah.
and then it is available for streaming on Hulu. But I really encourage you, Robert, to watch it the night it comes out in real time with the commercials and to have the full TV experience. Make yourself a specialty cocktail if possible, or mocktail, whatever your taste is. And it's just like it's such a fun experience to watch it now. I mean, I'm just having the best time as a viewer.
Yeah. So you were in the writer's room. Can you kind of talk a little bit about the just that I mean, had you ever been really in a writer's room like this before? Because I know that you had done scripts and you had done stuff for Hollywood, but like to be an actual kind of, quote unquote staff writer on this show, was this the very first experience like that?
Yeah, that was new for me. I created a lot of shows. I'd written a lot of pilots and sold feature films and developed those. But this is my first time being on staff, so it was a really fun experience. And from what I heard from other writers, I had a really um, like unique and wonderful experience. That it can be a lot harder in a writer's room, but there was a lot of laughter, a lot of frustration, but a lot of laughter, a lot of warmth. And it was a collaboration that I really enjoyed doing because, when you write a novel, as you know, you're alone, you're by yourself, you bear the weight of everything every day. And so when you're in a writer's room, you got eight or nine other writers, seven or eight other writers who are helping you with that. And so it's just like it's that kind of team effort felt really fun to me. And I loved it.
Yeah. Now, obviously, I'm assuming you were not in the room with Sterling when he was, pitching and selling the show. But do you know just how much of it like I'm assuming with him as the creator, he really kind of has those benchmarks throughout of, this is how we're going to start, this is where we're going, and this is how we're going to end. Or did that change throughout the writing process as you guys were working on the different episodes?
I mean, I think, in terms of plot and structure, we worked with that somewhat over the course of the season, but Sterling has such an amazingly accurate sense of what he wants and what he needs. And he has a way of guiding everything through a very, at times, chaotic process that makes you feel very comfortable and steady. And like Sterling knows what's going to work and for him and what's not going to work. And that for a writer on a staff is such a relief. There's no uncertainty or indecision. He's open to every idea, but he also knows what he wants. And so that's the perfect combination to me as a collaborator.
Yeah. And of course, people who are crime fans, especially crime readers, from the I mean, this isn't a spoiler because this is literally like the first like minute or two. We have Tim Blake Nelson basically is about to take his life, or this was seems like he writes down a letter and then he puts it in a Jim Thompson Texas by the Tail. I mean,
Yeah, right,
not I guess a very well known Jim Thompson novel, so but it's
right.
become one of those. I don't know. It's just one of those things where, like, as a crime writer, you're like, oh my God. So yeah, it was. You can tell there's little things throughout that, and I'm really excited to see, the rest of the season. What's going to happen? Is this considered more limited, or is there a chance that you guys would continue with the story?
I think there's a chance to continue. I think it's set up to be something that every season, Ethan Hawke's character Lee could have adventures. There's so many great side characters that I think it's something that definitely has legs if that's what Sterling wants.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's get to Crooks. The new novel just recently came out. Got really great
From
praise
from your favorite writer, you want to add that part?
from not only my favorite writer, also the viewer's favorite writer.
Thank you.
Don Winslow says a truly stunning masterpiece of crime fiction. Lou Berney's Crooks stands with some of the finest crime novels ever written.
Yeah,
That's
screw you,
excellent.
Mario Puzo, right? Screw
Well, I
you.
mean, he includes a fascinating family cocktail with elements of Goodfellas, Boogie Nights, and The Godfather, all brilliantly mixed together in one unforgettable novel.
Yeah.
So, the reason I didn't want to embarrass you with the short story collection earlier, but one of the reasons for bringing that up with also because I was able to track down a copy. But this is a novel, but it's also in my head kind of is also like a short story. It is one of those like uh, Olive Kitteridge, or if you ever read Mona Awad's 13 Ways of
Mhm.
Looking at the Fat Girl. It's like it's a long piece of the same obviously families, but in many ways it's broken down into sections, which could
Mhm.
be like, almost like a series of novellas because we focus on, I don't feel like I'm giving anything away that way, but like, is that the way you initially kind of approached it? Or can you talk about just like where the inspiration came for this? Because I would say with your other novels, I mean, this is definitely it's not like, something similar that you've done before.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think with this one, I definitely wanted to write about a family. And to me, almost immediately, I was thinking that the best way to approach that structurally was to start with the family as a group, split off into the family as individual siblings, and then come back with them as a group. So that structure came very early to me. And I mean, I see where you would take it as sort of a collection of separate pieces. But for me, it always felt of a piece, like in terms of like a family, like people will go away, go do their own thing, but they're always part of that family. And so for me, that was a goal, is to make sure that there was enough overlap and connection that I was telling the story of a family and not just the individuals in it. But I also want to make sure the story of the individuals would be page turning and fun and entertaining, and each one would have their own specific tone that kind of fit the specific the character.
Yeah. I,
I really love a lot of different subgenres just to go off of that. And it was an opportunity to say like, okay, what subgenre fits Ray? What crime subgenre fits Ray the most? What subgenre fits Alice? And kind of play around with that and have fun.
and one of and I don't know if it's a spoiler, but well, in one of the ads for it, or at least it says, two continents. So there is one story that takes place elsewhere in another country. I guess
Yeah.
I don't want to spoil it. I don't think it really spoils it. But
No.
why did you pick that location specifically? Was there a certain reason?
Well, the location, I don't think it's a spoiler, is Russia in the
Yeah.
early 90s, Moscow in 93, I think, or 94, right after the fall of communism. And to me, that was just a very exciting time and place. My wife and I at the time just gotten out of grad school, and we were like, should we go to Moscow and work at an English language newspaper just for the hell of it? And we didn't end up doing that, but I kind of always regretted it. I thought that would have been such a wild experience because it was the Wild West at the time after the fall of communism for about 2 or 3 years. It was just crazy in Moscow. And so the good thing about being a writer is you can kind of revisit your regrets and live them again in a different way. And so I thought, like, I want to go back there. I want to live there. And this time, there's no danger. I'm not going to get shot or dumped in the river. But it was a way to kind of just experience something I always wanted to experience.
Yeah. So how about, I mean, because this takes place over the course of several different decades. I mean, it starts out, I believe, remind me again, it was
60s,
60s.
60
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
So, and then like, how much research or did you feel the need to do, or were you not really letting research get in the way? Because obviously it takes place again over certain decades where you have to be just aware of, especially in Vegas, like, well, which buildings are still standing or which buildings are no longer there. And the same thing in Russia. Yeah, I mean, was that something that you really kind of dug into?
Yeah, some of it was my book November Road is set partly in Las Vegas in the early 60s. So I had already done research for that. So that slotted in easily. And then the 70s, when I was a kid growing up, I was the same age as the character. So that felt pretty easy. I didn't have to really do a lot with that. Moscow in 93, I had to do a lot of research on that, a lot of reading, a lot of watching, a lot of talking to people. Again, though, as you know, what you try to do is a pound of research, you use just a sprinkle of that actually in the book. So I got way more research than I actually ended up using, but I did a ton of research on Moscow. That was the main one. But it did help that I was the same age as a couple of the characters. And so I didn't have to stretch quite as far in terms of the time period.
And again, I don't want to talk too much about the book. I feel like it's probably not spoilers, but at the same time, I'm just like, I feel like there's also one of the kids is more of like an adoptive kid.
Mhm.
What was the thinking to, like what was the idea or like how did that come about? The inspiration to bring in not only the core, quote unquote, core family members, but also then there's this adoptive child who is sort of, I guess, age-wise is kind of in the middle of the rest of
Yeah,
them.
yeah, she's in the middle. I think it was the thinking of like that family. The book's really kind of about family, obviously. And it's about the idea of, how you're raised and who you're connected to biologically determines your fate. And I wanted to play with that with an adopted child thrown into the mix, like how much of that nature versus nurture actually, works. And in some ways, that character is the most like the family values than anyone else, even though she's adopted. So it was just kind of an interesting way to play with another aspect of family, which was the whole point of the book for me. Is like, what does it mean to be told since you're 3 years old that you're an outlaw, that you're a pirate? Does that shape your life? How does it shape it? Can you escape that? Do you embrace it? And so with an adopted child, it just kind of took on a new dimension.
Yeah. Speaking of family, the kind of like I guess the subtitle for this novel is a novel about crime and family. It's not a novel about a crime family, it's crime and family. Was this something was this more you or the publisher? Like how did the subtitle come about for
I think that
this?
was both parties were making sure that we separated enough from the idea that this is a typical mafia family or a typical cartel family. Like that's not what the book's about. There's great books about that stuff, but there's fewer great books about families that are all, influenced by crime in its broadest sense. And that's what I kind of wanted to play with. So I wanted to make sure the subtitle reflected that. And, it just kind of was here's what the book's about.
And also, I should read another blurb here. Jason Rakulik says Crooks is a smart and funny crime novel with a big, big heart. The characters are so easy to love, and Lou Berney's writing a lot is alive with wit and warmth and joy. He's such a gifted stylist and a terrific storyteller. I've read all his books, and this is my new favorite.
I
And
love
I
that.
will say at Thriller Fest this past year, which again, shout out to Jason, his book, The Last One at the Wedding, won the Thriller Award for
The big one.
best best
Best
standalone
thriller. Yeah,
best
best
thriller,
thriller.
which I think
Yeah.
now is, I don't know, I feel like they've changed the category again or whatever because it was like best
Yeah.
mystery, best thriller, and they're like, well, mystery doesn't make sense. But anyway, yes, Jason won. It was huge, and I remember he was talking about the book. He was, he loved the book. He loved the book. He would not stop talking about it. Honestly.
Yeah, I know.
Um,
I love that.
so that was a great blurb from him. I want to talk about this is probably at least the book that you've published that has like there's a lot of chapters in this. I mean, you've had a lot of chapters in other books, but these are really short. I guess can you talk a little bit about just I don't know if it necessarily would fall underneath the idea of the pacing, but it's a very fast read, and I think that also plays into the fact that it's written in third person present tense. Was
Mhm.
that something too, where you had that at the beginning, you knew that it was going to be best told from the kind of the present tense point of view, or did you maybe start in a different tense, or like how'd that come about?
I think it's present tense. Like if
Yeah,
you'd asked me that, I wasn't entirely sure that yeah, it's just a vibe. It's a feeling like when I start a book, whether it's like going to be present tense or not. Like with Dark Ride, it was very clear to me that I wanted that present tense because I wanted that feeling of momentum. And that must have been my thinking with this one too, is that just like these characters, their lives are almost out ahead of them and they're like trying just to catch up. And I like that sense of doing present tense when it comes to that feeling in a novel. But I don't know exactly how to explain it, but I definitely think there's a place for present tense and a place for past tense. And, it's just one of those things as a writer for me, uh, like what feels right at the time. I'm not sure there's certain things I can intellectualize about writing for sure. Like I'm really into the craft of writing and I have lots to say and think about, the craft of writing. But with tense, I'm not sure it's not just more feeling for me.
yeah. But have you ever started a novel or maybe short story with one particular tense, and then a couple pages in, a couple chapters in, you realize just something in your gut where you're like, this just isn't the right tense. We should kind of switch it up, or from the beginning, you're like, okay, this is
Maybe.
best going to be told in this type of tense.
Maybe. I know for sure I've sometimes switched from third person limited to first person or from first person to third person limited. Like I've made that switch, the
Mhm.
perspective switch. And I'm sure I've probably made the tense switch too. I just can't remember off the top of my head.
And then in terms of the structures you mentioned before, again, we start off with the family and then we kind of split off into different parts, focusing on just one of the kids. Um, was there a specific reason we dealt with I guess the kids in that order, if that makes sense, which you have two females and three males, and the way it's broken up, I believe, is we do kind of male, female, male, female, male.
Mhm.
Um, did that just kind of come about, or was that in the back of your head, kind of like the way you wanted to structure that, going back and forth?
I think what it came down to, if I remember correctly, it had to do with the time periods that I wanted to cover. I knew I needed to probably do it in chronological order. And so I kind of had a sense of what each character's story when it took place. And I think that was a big determinant. Like Jeremy is in the 80s in LA and then Tallulah's in the 90s in Moscow. So I kind of knew Jeremy's coming first, then Tallulah. And then I knew Ray was going to be in the 90s in Vegas, so that would come next. So a lot of it had to do with chronology. And it worked out in some ways that the personalities kind of also reflected, the difference in the shifts. Like I kind of wanted hard shifts between each section, and they're
Yeah.
four very distinct characters. And it was going to be a hard shift no matter what, but I really wanted to highlight the fact that we're jumping from a character A who's completely different than character B. And that was kind of part of it as well.
Yeah. And there's a great voice to this book. Was that something that came natural, or just as you were drafting it? Because I mean, the opening page, the very first line is, "It's in his blood." You don't believe him? Listen to this. And you go in the whole thing, and that's with, of course, Buddy, who's the father, the patriarch. Yeah, like I said, there's, and I think it helps with the present tense. This is very geeky writer stuff, but like,
Yeah, I know. I
did
love
the
this stuff.
actual, I don't know, that voice was just, from the very beginning, just grabs you.
Yeah, I really love I love close third person. And I love like characters like these. These characters really clicked for me. Their voices clicked for me. So it was easy, really easy for almost all of them to get into their perspective, into their minds, and into their voice right away. And so this, I would say, was like the most joyful book I've ever written. Like I had the most fun writing this book, or I enjoyed it the most than any book I've written because I clicked so easily into each character's interior voice and it just kind of flowed from there. And I just sort of let them talk. And that's always easier than trying to drag words out of your characters.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we could go on with this. You're reading blurbs, but I mean, I believe it was starred review in basically every single major trade review. And again, I would not be surprised if we see it on some definitely best of lists later this year, and hopefully some awards next year. So in the time
Yeah, let's
remaining,
hope.
do you anything obviously besides the lowdown, anything else that you'd recommend that you've read or watched or listened to recently?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm reading a great novel right now by Stephen Graham Jones called The Buffalo Hunter Hunter.
Hmm.
It's sort of he's a Native American writer, a native writer, and it's crime slash horror or horror slash crime. And I love books that kind of take different genres and mash them together. And the writing is phenomenal, and it's a page turner. And those are my two big deals. Like I love good writing. I love pages that turn themselves. So I would highly recommend the Buffalo Hunter Hunter. As far as what I'm watching now, I'm really excited. The new Slow Horses just came out. I'm a big fan of that show and those novels, Mick Herron's novels. But the show's fantastic. So that's the other thing I'm getting geared up to watch.
Yeah. And speaking of which, actually, just running back to the rundown, how many episodes is this? Is just 7 or 8 episodes?
Eight. The Lowdown's
Eight
eight
episodes.
episodes. Yep.
So, because the same thing just with Slow Horses, I feel like every
Yep.
season's like 6 episodes. It's one of those things where I feel like there is some type, I don't know if it's run more by the producers or the showrunner, where they kind of want to make it like, oh, we want to do 10 episode season, but it doesn't really need to be 10
Right.
episodes. So is that
Yeah.
something with this where FX would have given, the leeway to do 9 or 10 episodes, but you felt, or the writing team felt that like, no, we can tell this story in just 8 episodes.
I'm not sure. Like I wasn't at that level of discussions, at that level with the network. But one thing I do know is like we all kind of felt that 8 episodes was perfect. Like we were all like, this is whether or not we had the option for more. I felt like eight was just a perfect amount of time to tell this story. And that's the great thing about TV these days is you have the opportunity not to be stuck, back, for many, many years, you had to do 22 episodes a season, period. And so that really limited the kind of shows you could put on TV. And so being able to do a story in 8 episodes or 6 or 10 opens up a lot of possibilities like the lowdown that you wouldn't have had, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So Lou, as always, it was a blast to talk. The newest book, Crooks, it's everywhere. It's in bookstores, audiobook, ebook. Make sure you pick it up. Really, really, really is a great book. I mean, I'm loving it. So, yeah.
Thank you,
Until
man.
next time, I'm sure I'll see you either sometime coming
Thriller
up, Thriller
Fest.
Fest,
Yeah.
or
Or,
yeah,
or
hopefully.
before. Yeah.
So, and
Well, I really
we'll.
appreciate it, and I love having these kind of these geeky craft talks. So this is my favorite kind. So, I'm not calling you a geek, Robert, not at all.
No,
But I like these.
I'm fine
I
if you
like the
do
nuts
call
and
me a geek.
bolts.
That's okay.
I love the nuts and bolts of writing. So I really appreciate this.
Yeah. And so we'll see everybody else next time.